Aloha and happy Thanksgiving again. So this is a man called FD Signifier, and this is how did Trump actually win. And anyone who's asking that to me is uninformed. I expected Trump to win. I'm not a Trump fan. I voted for Jill Stein, but I watch right-wing news. I watch left-wing news. And only liberals thought Trump was going to win. People on the far left, like Savvy Sabs, Hardlands Media, they all thought Trump would probably win. No one backs Kamala Harris. She doesn't have a following, a mass. Like, people love Trump. For whatever reason, he's a little crazy, but people love Trump. People love Bernie Sanders. People loved Obama. People do not care for Kamala Harris. But this video is 36 minutes long, 37 minutes long. We're not going to do the whole thing. I think about the first 10 minutes. But he calls himself a left-wing progressive. He doesn't know how Trump won. Most of the time when you're on the left, you stay informed. So to say that, how did Trump win, to me kind of signifies that you're more liberal than left, but we'll discuss.
All right, not a lot of fun and games today. We're going to
There's
jump
not a
right
huge
in.
difference between the two. Like, why all this?
I did a live the day after the election where Donald Trump became only the second president in American history to win a non-consecutive term by convincingly beating Kamala Harris, and emotions were high, limited information was available. But based on what I had seen and what I had been hearing at that time, I made the proclamation in this live that the core reason Kamala Harris lost her bid for presidency
Sexism
of the
and
United
racism.
States was misogyny and racism.
It's nonsense. Kamala Harris wouldn't even answer a question. Every time they asked her something, she just rambled on about her childhood, some lady, and some other stuff, and you wouldn't even know what the question was by the time she ended. She had no real policies other than her one $25,000 house thing. But, like, good Lord, it's just nonsense when people say stuff
I
like
base
that.
this not just on my general beliefs on the pervasiveness of
Racism,
sexism and
misogyny.
racism in this
Yeah.
country, but on the fact that at the time, the early data indicated that there was a huge decrease in voter turnout for her specifically with rural and
she had no
suburban white
following.
men. Many
No one
folks,
likes her.
including more moderate leftists and liberals, agreed with this take, but also disagreed with the take. Others that I would call my peers politically,
I would tell you almost any time a liberal says anything, go with the opposite. Liberals don't understand almost anything. They don't get what's happening, right? So they're in the middle and they're just like, oh, it's kind of good to do a little bit of stuff. Like, liberals are no, yeah, just
and some even further left than I, felt like this take was erroneous
left
and in
than
some
him.
ways let the Democrats
That is
off
right.
the hook for their many mistakes, their many
Why let the
mistakes
Democrats off the hook?
during this election cycle. Or
No,
like their
nobody
liberals,
on the left.
ironically, they didn't like the finger being pointed at white people when there's black men, Latino men, and Palestinians to take the blame. I found both of these responses frustrating, being
And then-
pointed at white people when they're
Oh man, oh well, I didn't go that far back. But anyway, why? What does that take the blame? Muslims stood on their ground, right? Like, you're killing our people. So I'm not a Muslim, but they're like, you're killing our people. I'm gonna stand up for my people and vote for the other person, not for the person that's in office already killing our people. That it's messed up that liberals talk about how it's someone's fault to blame. They blame the voters. Why are you blaming the voter when Kamala Harris could have done? She's the vice president. She could have done a lot. She could have said that she was for a ceasefire. Like, that Palestinian stuff, you talking about Muslims to blame. Like, if she was bombing your family, would you vote for her? Oh, Trump is going to bomb my family even more. It's nuts.
There's black men, Latino men, and Palestinians to take
Sorry,
the
quick
blame.
repeat.
I found both of these responses frustrating as neither really aligned with how I saw the whole situation. But at the time, I didn't have enough data and I hadn't talked to enough people to feel too confident in my own take. But now, some weeks later, as most of the details and info are near final, along with being able to observe and process a lot of other people's opinions in the aftermath, I want to return to this opinion with a little more data. That's what we'll be doing in this video, using a mostly data-driven approach to explain why Kamala Harris lost, or better yet, why Donald Trump won, and what lessons
like a more
could and
left-wing
should be
approach using
learned
data.
from this election. I want to first make a few
what he
things
says.
clear. Here in the swing state of Georgia, where I live, I voted for Kamala Harris. Harris. I didn't
Why
do
not
this
Jill
out of an
Stein?
alignment to the politics that Kamala represented or ran on, especially in the latter part of her campaign.
I'm not voting for the politics that she ran on. Is not anything a left winger would ever say. Like, what? What are you voting for then?
I didn't do this with the mythical hope that she would be pushed left. That just doesn't really happen. I voted for Kamala Harris because of the two devils I was faced with. I preferred her. The devil.
So you don't know about the Green Party. You don't know about the Libertarians. You don't know about DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. There's a lot of other people that aren't evil that you could have voted for, because you buy into the two-party system. You vote for evil. Good job. No, that's not what the left does. We don't vote for evil. We vote for what we know is right.
Devil I knew. To many, that is unsatisfactory. And to those of you who feel this way, it is what it is. To me, the world is already in a hellscape situation,
So
and
let's
I
not do
personally
anything
find
about
no
it.
solace in the individual victory that would have been a protest or third-party vote, nor did I think that it would make a difference, and we'll look at why that's completely true later on. I am not of the mind that a Trump presidency and a Kamala Harris presidency would have been indiscernible from each other. On a grand scale,
Let's see. The Democrats, Joe Biden and Bill Clinton, they passed the crime bill. They said they didn't even care. They don't care why you got like this. We're just going to bring you to heel. So Obama, he passed his Health Care Act, and that fined poor people for not having health care. He said he was going to pass universal health care. He had a supermajority and then didn't do it. He fined poor people for not being able to afford health care. How many wars did he start? How many wars did Bill Clinton start? Bill Clinton did NAFTA. He gave our jobs away. Is there going to be a discernible difference? One, probably, but who's going to... Trump is going to hurt us in this way. Kamala's going to hurt us in that way. Jill Stein will help us. So yeah, let's vote for one that'll hurt us in a different way. Makes no sense.
that's likely true. But at a micro level, at an interpersonal level, and at an immediate level, I think this is demonstrably
crime bill was
false.
pretty
I don't think
immediate.
anyone who's serious can say that to be a fact across the board. Trump's 4 years as president before were harmful in numerous ways that were unique to him, including his handling of a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, which is made worse by his incompetence.
agree with that.
But I
Trump did
digress. I'm
mishandle
only
the
bringing this
pandemic.
up because I also don't want this video to be mistaken as a defense for Kamala Harris or the Democrats.
Sounds like
And
it
it's
is.
really frustrating that our political discourse on the left has been so atomized and just made into content garbage that people who take nuanced look at these complex issues end up.
How is it nuanced to say that one party that's almost the exact same as the other, just vote for one of them, it doesn't matter? Like, it's more nuanced to break down the other parties and to have people look at the other parties and to try to get your audience to understand that there is not much of a difference between a Kamala and a Trump, and that if we all do start voting for that third party, that we can make a change. There is no nuance in staying in the system, staying mainstream. That's exactly what is wanted by Donald Trump. Yeah, okay.
Having to be in one camp or another. Like, I'm literally in the moment have done this take like 10 times because I'm trying to find the words to
it's
say
bullshit.
how frustrating it is to want to have a nuanced conversation
not a
around
nuanced
electoralism,
conversation.
when
What
there's
you're
people
trying to
that
do,
if
just
you
trying to
don't
force
support
Kamala.
Kamala Harris, they don't want to hear anything you want to say, even
Nah,
though there's
I listen.
obvious reasons to not support Kamala Harris. And people that don't support Kamala Harris feel like there's no logical or moral reason to vote for her regardless,
There
as
isn't.
if anything in our
I
political
can
reality is
understand why
that black
people are
and white.
scared and vote for Trump or Harris, but
But it
there's
is
really
what it
no
is.
logical
I feel
reason
like
to vote
it's
for either
important
one.
to continue challenging my more liberal and moderate audience to dispose of the belief that Democrats are on our side. At best, they hold us hostage and force us to be complicit in their failings
you're gonna
and
say to vote for
atrocities
that.
by
You're gonna
holding
vote
the
for the
knife to
person
our
who holds
throat
you
that is the
hostage.
Republican Party. But I
How-
also think the grandstanding and
Stockholm
finger wagging
syndrome.
often by people
So-
who are least
So, okay, he just admits to having Stockholm syndrome. Like, you're voting for the person you just said kidnaps us, that holds us hostage. How could you vote for that? That doesn't make any sense. That's the difference in a liberal and a left winger. Like, no, like, you'd rather give your life than vote for your hostage person, right? Because then you're just giving your kids to the hostage person, then their kids to the hostage taker. Like, really? This is what you want?
affected by the threat that is the Republican Party. is just as ridiculous, especially when that ideology veers into, I'll just call it magical thinking at this point. But for those who still don't understand why the Democrats are bad, I'll link some other videos that break down their failings in the description. With that out of the way, let's get to it. As of writing with 99% of the vote in nationwide, Kamala Harris has 73,879,941 votes, and Trump has 76,528,802 votes. This ranks second and fourth all time in popular votes for president. And this is with 90 million eligible voters deciding to stay home, which, believe it or not, is typical for non-voters. Usually,
Listen, 90 million voters stayed home. If they would all go vote for anybody, Green, Libertarian, DSA, go vote for yourself. Just vote and see what happens. There's enough people out there that are just disparaged and just put their head in the sand because this is nonsense. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, stupid, nonsense. But those 90 million people who didn't vote, please just go vote for anybody. Vote for me. Vote for write-in slug. It doesn't matter. Just go vote. It would help a lot.
Voter turnout is around 60 to 65%. However, one important detail that we'll come back to a few times is that in 2020, Joe Biden set the record for popular votes with 81 million votes. The important fact to point out here is that Kamala Harris got around
The record is 81 million votes and 90 million people didn't vote. Just let that sink in. We could vote somebody else. We could do better.
7 million votes less than Joe Biden did back in 2020 nationwide. Now, you might immediately look at that and say this is because Kamala ran a bad campaign and because she campaigned on the wrong things that her base and regular people did not care about. Or you may immediately look and say that Kamala is a victim of sexism and racism because the same people that voted for Biden, whose campaign was exactly like hers, did not vote for her. And I think when you're looking at it at a national level, it's hard to be definitive because we're talking about all 50 states, many with complex dynamics of how voting plays out. There's reasons to think that Kamala failed to inspire nationwide with a campaign that started late, where American people didn't get to choose her, and her campaign was not overly detailed on policy. And the stuff that was emphasized showed her to be a centrist and a moderate, which much of the base might not have been into. I would argue that much of her rhetoric at the Democratic National Convention in August was more suited for a moderate Republican than a Democrat. She talked about securing borders, having a strong military. She avoided addressing identity politics. She campaigned with Liz Cheney. One of her biggest things she would talk about was how she was supported by the Republican establishment, and most alarmingly, she refused to engage with any talk of ending the United States' role in the ongoing genocide in Palestine. In the aftermath of her loss, many pundits and insiders have came out to make accusations that her campaign wasn't very good and the groundwork strategy was flawed. Some point out that the way she got the nomination was problematic to begin with. There's a whole lot of things to criticize about Kamala's strategy before you even begin to consider how this strategy was either informed by or was structured to deal with the fact that she was a black woman. Since the election, I've talked to a lot of black women, and one thing that's been said to me multiple times,
I don't think her being a black woman, yes, we do have our struggles being black, and women, I'm sure, have their struggles too, like it's obvious. But that's not why people didn't vote for her. You just listed all the reasons, the non-inspiring, not having any real topics or whatnot. Like, she wouldn't even answer a question. It was insane. When they would ask her a question, she just started rambling. Like,
is that as a black woman in these types of spaces, it doesn't matter what you say or do or what you say you're going to do. You will always be received as woke and emotional and inherently incompetent and all these things.
So she would have came in talking about universal health care, talking about UBI, talking about raising the minimum wage, talking about housing and all kinds, the stuff that people really want and need. They would have liked that. They would, had she had Bernie Sanders as her vice president, coming in, talking all his madness, right? People would have loved that. But she comes in, they make fun of her for cackling and stuff. Like, if if people make fun of you for cackling because you don't know how to answer questions, then yeah, it's not about being woke, emotional. It is about being incompetent. She was incompetent. She sounded incompetent and seemed incompetent. So people thought she was incompetent.
And one could argue that the conservatism of her campaign was an effort to counteract that natural narrative. A narrative that, if you look at exit polls, she definitely seemed to stick to her
Right,
despite
right. Why vote for
her
a fake
flawed campaign.
conservative
And I'm
or
not saying
conservative
that
light
to
or
say that her
Republican light?
campaign
You can
was
just vote for the
good. I'm just saying
conservative
it helps
Republican.
explain one of the reasons why it was the way it was. However, this doesn't seem to matter when you look at the data. When you
Let's look at the
zoom
data.
in
What's
from
the
the
data say?
national level and just look at the 7 key swing states that really decided this election, you begin to really get some answers. For those unaware or out.
And then again, so we have 7 key swing states that really make the decision. You see all that red up there? If you are in one of those red states and you voted for Kamala Harris, you wasted your vote. You should have just voted for Jill Stein, or you should have voted your conscience, because you know that in those red states that Kamala's not going to win. So voting for the Democrat, it's just a waste of vote. Vote green. If you're in one of those blue states there that you know isn't going to go Republican, go ahead and vote your conscience. Vote Libertarian. If you want to vote green or whatever. Now, if you're in one of the yellow states, you know what I would say? Vote green or Libertarian anyway. Show them that in the states that matter most, we still got our courage, right? Like, vote for what you want, not what you're scared of.
Outside of the U.S., our presidential elections are some bullshit low-key. The country has 50 states, right? And each state is worth a certain amount of points. If you win that state by getting the most votes in that state, you get all 20 points. Even if you only got 51% of the vote, you still get all 20 points. What this ends up doing is making it so 5 to 10 states that are up for grabs really control the entire election. And that's because most states in America consistently vote in a very specific way. Some states like Minnesota, for example, haven't voted for a Republican for president since 1968.
So
States like Texas, on the other hand, haven't voted for a Democrat since 1972. This means that any analysis of the election that doesn't hyper-focus on what happened in those states isn't necessarily the greatest analysis, because in those states is where the voting population has and feels the most responsibility. This is where campaigns spend the most money, and this is where the campaign's successes or failures are really reflected, and where data and feedback is most valuable. So that's where I'm going to focus most of my analysis on. And when you focus the analysis on the 7 battleground states, you start to see some really interesting features. In 2024, there were 7 battleground states: North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, and Wisconsin. Kamala Harris lost all of them. However, the narrative that I presented a second
All right, sorry for that quick pause there. My lady woke up. I had to go give her a hug.
ago about her flawed campaign, that voters stayed home because she ran too far to the right and didn't support Palestine, that she didn't run on any policies, etc. That doesn't really hold up here, because in 4 of the 7 swing states, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada, Kamala Harris actually outdid Joe Biden in 2020. Now, it's from small numbers. It's not like she outdid him by a whole lot. But considering that Joe Biden had 7 million more votes nationwide, the fact that Kamala Harris kept up with him in these 4 battleground states indicates that she wasn't doing nearly as bad as people are trying to say she was. And in the 3 states where she didn't outdo him, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, she got within around 70,000 votes or less. So he didn't blow her out there either. Now, you may still feel that Kamala's campaign was bad because you don't like her politics or tactics on a specific personal level. And
Right.
I would agree with all of those opinions. However, that doesn't mean her campaign was ineffective. The numbers say that it
very
was. The
ineffective.
difference is in Trump and some of the specific voter bases that he was able to pull
Trump was
in
more
those same
effective.
states, as well as specific voters that did not show up for Harris that showed up for Biden. While all the criticisms that you probably have of Harris and her campaign are true, I still think the results are more consistent with this country's deep-rooted misogyny and racism. I know people don't like that, so let me address some of the common arguments that I've.
Like, I did a video called something, the something about white privilege. I forget exactly what I named it, but I've been shot at because I'm black. I've been choked, chased, all kinds of stuff when I was young. I had an afro and all that. Like, I'm pretty light skinned now. But she didn't lose because she was a woman or because she was black. She lost because she was a terrible candidate. That's it. She was a terrible candidate, could not voice her opinions well. She just was not good. But let's let him, like, all these excuses that don't make sense. That's how liberals sound. They just talk about nothingness. It's crazy.
I've seen against this take. So one of the main things I've seen is that Kamala lost because of abstainers and third-party voters, most of which who had the genocide in Palestine as a deal breaker. All that said, very little data points to those people having a significant effect. The most prominent third-party candidate left to Kamala who did not support the genocide was Jill Stein. And in no swing state did Stein get even a full 1% of the vote. In Wisconsin,
from what I hear on my other news channels, though, she got a higher percent of the Muslim vote than either Kamala or Donald Trump. And to me, that speaks volumes. If black people could do that, if we could do that, if even poor people could do that, if anybody, workers, just people in general, like, look at them and be like, oh, you're both unacceptable. We have to vote for what's right. Then we could do good stuff. We could get good things. Why don't you have good things? Because we vote for bad things.
In Georgia, she didn't even come in third. I know some truly principled leftists actually voted for Donald Trump in protests, which, okay. But I seriously doubt that was enough to really make the difference here, to put the loss on Stein and protest voters. You could argue that more principled anti-genocide voters just stayed home, but that would clash with the aforementioned fact that turnout was up in swing states. Stein did her best in Michigan, where there is a large Muslim population, where there was also a well-organized effort against the Harris campaign because of her response to the genocide. But even in Michigan, if you add all of Stein's votes to Kamala's, she would still lose. This is important to point out for a few reasons, but for the moment, I really wanted to sink in with liberals and moderates who have went full mask off online with their vitriol towards the people of Palestine and the anti-genocide movement. In the days and weeks after the election, many on social media pointed at Palestinians and their supporters as the cause to Harris's loss, and it was gross and abhorrent to witness. People posted videos of them going to Starbucks, which, by the way, Starbucks was never actually involved in any boycott related to Palestine. That's just a significant marker of how uninformed a lot of us are online, myself included. But regardless of whether or not Starbucks was a part of the anti-Palestine movement, the fact that people were going there explicitly to spite Palestinians, that shit is whack. That shit is fucked up. All you should be ashamed of yourselves. People argued, well, these folks are just angry and they should.
Okay, so we're about 12 minutes in. I'm gonna leave that there. So that's FD Signifier talking about why he thinks Kamala Harris lost. It has to do with racism and misogyny, where she just didn't stand on anything. So, I mean, if you pay attention to politics across the spectrum, you would have been aware that Kamala had a pretty good chance of losing. I was not surprised at all that she lost. I wasn't surprised in 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost. I knew she was going to lose. I told all my people, Donald Trump is winning this. And the only reason Joe Biden won was because of COVID. Donald Trump handled COVID terribly, or he would have won a second term then. But anyway, that's the video for now, and we'll be back shortly.